The smoke still burned in Zara's memories, even 15 years later. She could smell it now, sitting in her elegant office aboard the diplomatic station orbiting Centauri Prime, as she reviewed the peace accords between the hegemony and the human coalition. Her four-fingered hands trembled slightly as she turned the pages, and she forced herself to breathe deeply through the small gill slits along her neck. She had been only 12 when the Catherian raiders attacked her home world of Velshan. Her people, the Velathi, were known throughout the galaxy for their pacifist nature and their incredible ability to sense emotions through bioelectric fields. They had never developed weapons of war, believing that understanding and empathy could solve any conflict. That belief had made them easy targets. Zara closed her large, silver eyes and let the memory wash over her. She had been hiding in the root cellar beneath their family dwelling when the screaming started. Her mother had pushed her down there just moments before the raiders burst through their door. Through the thin wooden floor, she heard her parents' voices, calm and steady even as they faced their killers. They spoke of forgiveness, of understanding, of peace. The raiders laughed. The explosion that followed had collapsed part of the dwelling above her, trapping her in the cellar as the house burned. She could feel her parents' life forces fade through her natural empathic abilities, along with hundreds of others across their small farming community. The raiders were systematic, thorough. They left no survivors, except they had missed one small girl in a root cellar. For 3 days, Zara had remained trapped, surviving on stored vegetables and muddy water that had seeped through the rubble. She could sense the raiders above, searching for anything valuable, their minds radiating cruel satisfaction at their work. Her empathic abilities, usually a gift, became a curse as she felt their twisted emotions. On the 4th day, she heard different footsteps, heavier, more purposeful, and then a voice that would haunt her dreams for the rest of her life, speaking in accented galactic standard. "Hello? Is anyone alive down there?" The voice was deep, rough around the edges, but carried something she hadn't felt in days, genuine concern. Through her empathic senses, she felt it too. A mind focused entirely on helping, on saving lives, with an underlying current of fury at what had been done here. "I'm here," she had whispered, her throat raw from crying and thirst. "Hold on, little one. I'm getting you out." The sound that followed was unlike anything she had ever heard. Not the hum of energy weapons or the whir of standard construction tools, but the harsh grinding of some kind of primitive cutting device. Sparks fell through the cracks in the rubble above her as the stranger worked. "What's your name?" the voice called down as he worked. "Zara. That's a pretty name. I'm—" There was a pause. Then, "I'm a friend." "How old are you, Zara?" 12 standard years." Another pause in the cutting. Through her empathic abilities, she felt a spike of anger from him, quickly controlled. "Are you hurt?" "My leg. Something heavy fell on it." "We'll take care of that. Just keep talking to me, okay?" "Tell me about your family." So she did. As the stranger cut through beam after beam of the collapsed house, Zara told him about her mother, who grew the most beautiful singing flowers in their valley. About her father, who could calm any frightened animal with just his touch. About her little brother Kel, who was visiting their grandparents in the next district, and was hopefully safe. The stranger listened to everything, asking questions that made her remember good things instead of the horror above. His emotional signature remained steady and calm, though she could sense the rage burning beneath the surface. Not at her, but at the ones who had done this. When he finally broke through, the light that streamed down seemed impossibly bright. She squinted up and saw a silhouette framed against the orange sky. She couldn't make out his features, but she could see that he was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing some kind of environmental suit. "There you are," he said, and she could hear the relief in his voice. "Let's get you out of there." He lowered some kind of harness and carefully lifted her up. When she emerged from the rubble, she gasped. Her home was gone. Everything was gone. The once green valley was now black with smoke and ash. Bodies of her people lay scattered across the ground. And in the distance, the raiders' ships were taking off, their holds full of stolen goods. But the stranger knelt beside her, his large hands gentle as he examined her injured leg. Through her empathic senses, she felt his determination to help her, to make sure she survived. It was the strongest emotional signature she had ever encountered. Pure, focused compassion, backed by an iron will. "The bone is broken," he said, "but it's a clean break. I can fix this." He worked on her leg with tools she didn't recognize, speaking softly to keep her calm. As he worked, she caught glimpses of his face through his helmet's faceplate. Human features, she realized: strong jaw, dark skin, kind eyes that seemed older than his face suggested. "Are you a doctor?" she asked. "No," he said with a slight smile. "I'm a soldier. But soldiers learn to patch people up. Why did you come here?" His hands stilled for a moment. "Because someone had to. We got the distress signal too late to stop this, but not too late to look for survivors. We, the Human Coalition Emergency Response Team. We were in the next system over when your planetary defense grid sent out the alert." Zara had heard of humans, but had never seen one before. Her people had little contact with the wider galaxy, preferring their peaceful farming communities. But she had heard stories that humans were warriors, aggressive and violent, always fighting among themselves and with others. This human didn't feel violent at all. His emotional signature was complex: sadness for what had happened, determination to help her, and that underlying fury at the raiders who had done this. But there was also something else. Something that surprised her. Guilt. "Why do you feel guilty?" she asked without thinking. He looked up at her sharply. "You can sense emotions?" She nodded. "All Valathi can. It's how we avoid conflicts. We feel what others feel." He was quiet for a long moment, focusing on setting her leg in some kind of medical brace. Finally, he spoke. "Because we should have been here sooner. Because we should have stopped this from happening. You couldn't have known. Maybe. But that doesn't make it easier." He finished with her leg and sat back on his heels. "Can you walk?" She tried to stand and found that the brace supported her weight, though her legs still ached. "Yes." "Good. My ship is about 1 kilometer away. We need to get you there before the raiders come back." As they walked through the ruins of her world, Zara found herself studying the human. He moved differently than her people, not with their flowing, peaceful gait, but with purpose and awareness. His head constantly turned, scanning for threats. His hand never strayed far from the weapon at his side. But his other hand stayed protectively near her shoulder, ready to steady her if she stumbled. They passed other buildings, other bodies. The human stopped at each one, checking for signs of life with the same careful attention he had shown her. At one house, he found a family pet. A small, furry creature called a jith. Trapped under debris, he spent precious minutes freeing it, even though it bit him in its terror. "Why did you do that?" Zara asked as they continued on, the human carrying the frightened animal. "It's just a jith. It was scared and hurt," he said simply. "Same as you were." That answer revealed something about humans that the stories had never mentioned. This one, at least, valued all life. Not just intelligent life. His ship was unlike anything Zara had ever seen. Where Valathi craft were smooth and organic-looking, grown rather than built, this human vessel was all angles and armor plating. It looked like it could survive anything the galaxy threw at it. But inside, it was surprisingly comfortable. The human, who still hadn't told her his real name, settled her into a medical bay and ran more detailed scans on her injuries. "You're going to be fine," he said after reviewing the results. "The leg will heal completely." "But," he hesitated. "Zara, I need to ask you something difficult. Do you have anywhere to go? Any family off-world?" She shook her head. "My grandparents were in the next district. If they survived, they might be at the refugee camps. We'll find them," he promised. "But first, I need to ask you about what happened here. The Coalition needs to know everything you remember about the raiders. Can you do that?" For the next hour, she told him everything she had seen and heard. Everything her empathic senses had picked up from the raiders' minds. The human listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions. She could feel his anger growing as she spoke, but it never seemed directed at her. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "They're slavers," he said finally. "Kytherian slavers working for someone in the outer territories. This wasn't random. They were specifically targeting empathic species." The implications hit Zara like a physical blow. "They're going to do this to other worlds? Not if we can stop them." The human stood, his emotional signature shifting into something harder, more focused. "Zara, I'm going to take you to the refugee station at Proxima Base. You'll be safe there, and they'll help you find your family. What about you? I have work to do." He was planning to go after the raiders, she realized. Alone. Through her empathic senses, she could feel his determination, but also his awareness of how dangerous it would be. "You could die," she said quietly. He smiled then. The first real smile she had seen from him. "Maybe. But if I don't try, they'll do this to more families like yours. I can't let that happen." The trip to Proxima Base took 2 days. During that time, the human taught her basic coalition standard, showed her how to use the ship's communication system to try to contact surviving Velothi, and told her stories about Earth, his homeworld. She learned that humans had once fought terrible wars among themselves, but had somehow learned to work together, that they now spent much of their time helping other species, even though many in the galaxy still saw them as violent primitives. "Why do you do it?" she asked on the second day. "Help others, I mean. What do you get out of it?" The human considered the question seriously. "My people have a saying. No one left behind. We learned the hard way what happens when good people do nothing in the face of evil, so now we try to make sure that never happens again." When they arrived at Proxima Base, Zara was amazed by the size of it. The refugee station was massive, home to thousands of beings from dozens of species. But what struck her most was how many humans were there, working alongside aliens to provide aid and comfort. The human walked with her to the registration center, where a kind Andorian woman helped her fill out refugee documents. As they finished the paperwork, Zara realized she still didn't know her rescuer's real name. "You never told me what to call you," she said. He knelt down so they were at eye level. For the first time, she could see his face clearly. Strong features marked by care and determination, eyes that had seen too much, but still held hope. "Names aren't important," he said gently. "What matters is that you're safe now. That you're going to grow up and do amazing things." "How do you know that?" "Because anyone who can survive what you've been through has the strength to change the world." He stood and ruffled her hair with one large hand. "Take care of yourself, Zara. Make your people proud." And then he was gone, disappearing into the crowds of the station before she could say goodbye properly. Now, 15 years later, Ambassador Zara Velthani sat in her office and wondered if she had done what he predicted. She had found her grandparents at another refugee station and had been raised by them in a human-sponsored colony world. She had excelled in her studies, learning diplomacy and interspecies relations. She had dedicated her life to preventing what happened to Velshan from happening to others, but she had never forgotten the human who saved her. She had tried to find him many times over the years, but coalition military records were classified, and she had never learned his real name. All she knew was that 3 weeks after he dropped her at Proxima Base, news reports told of a massive raid on a Kytherian slaver base in the outer territories. The entire operation had been destroyed, hundreds of slaves freed, and the trafficking network broken. The raid had been carried out by a single human operative, working with coalition intelligence. No names had been released, but Zara knew in her heart it had been him. Her rescuer had kept his promise. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Her aide, a young human named David, appeared in her doorway. "Ambassador, you have a priority message from Coalition Command." Zara straightened, her empathic senses picking up unusual excitement from David's emotional signature. "What is it?" "What is it?" "They've found him, ma'am, the human who saved you on Velshan. They want to arrange a meeting." Zara's breath caught. After all these years, after all her searching, they had finally found him. "When?" she managed to ask. "Tomorrow, ma'am. Admiral Chen thinks it would be good for Coalition Velothi relations to have the story come out." To show how our species help each other. Zara nodded, though her mind was spinning. Tomorrow, she would finally meet the human who had changed her life. Tomorrow, she would finally be able to say the words she had been practicing for 15 years. She just hoped she would be brave enough to say them when the moment came. Marcus Chen leaned against the observation deck railing of the Coalition Veterans Center on Luna, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath him. The blue marble looked peaceful from here, showing no signs of the struggles that had shaped him into the man he was today. At 38, he carried himself like someone who had seen too much, done too much, and lost too much along the way. The communication device in his pocket buzzed for the third time in 10 minutes. He knew who it was: Admiral Sarah Mitchell, his former commanding officer, and one of the few people who could still get him to return calls. But he wasn't ready to face whatever crisis she needed him for this time. "You can't avoid her forever," said a voice behind him. Marcus turned to see Dr. Elena Vasquez approaching, her medical coat flapping in the station's artificial breeze. Elena had been treating Coalition veterans for 15 years, and she had become something of a friend to Marcus during his stays at the center. "I'm not avoiding her," Marcus replied. "I'm just enjoying the view," Elena snorted. "Right. That's why you've been standing here for 3 hours, ignoring your comm device." Marcus sighed and pulled out the device, finally checking the messages. All 3 were from Admiral Mitchell, each one marked with increasing urgency. The last one simply read, "Marcus, answer your damn comm. This isn't about a mission. It's personal." That got his attention. Sarah Mitchell wasn't the type to mix personal matters with official business. "Fine," he muttered, activating the return call function. Admiral Mitchell's face appeared in the holographic display, her short gray hair and stern expression unchanged since Marcus had seen her last, but there was something different in her eyes, excitement mixed with concern. "About time, Chen. I was beginning to think you'd fallen off the edge of the station." "Sorry, Admiral, I was processing." It was their code phrase for the dark moods that sometimes overtook him. "What's so urgent that couldn't wait for my next scheduled check-in?" "We found her, Marcus." The words hit him like a physical blow. For a moment, he couldn't speak, couldn't even breathe properly. There was only one her that mattered in his life. The little girl he had failed to save properly 15 years ago. "Zara?" he managed to whisper. "Ambassador Zara Velvani of the Velothi Diplomatic Corps," Mitchell confirmed. "She's been looking for you for years, Marcus. She wants to meet." "Traster Lothi." Marcus turned away from the holographic display, his hands gripping the railing so hard his knuckles went white. Through the transparent aluminum window, Earth continued its slow rotation, oblivious to the turmoil in his mind. "She shouldn't want to see me," he said finally. "Marcus, I failed her, Sarah. I let her world burn. I let her parents die. I should have been there sooner. You saved her life. I saved one little girl while hundreds of others died. That's not success. That's barely damage control." Dr. Vasquez moved closer, her professional instincts kicking in. "Marcus, we've talked about this. The survivor's guilt isn't rational." Marcus turned back to face the Admiral's hologram. "What does she want? Money? An apology? Closure?" Admiral Mitchell's expression softened. "She wants to thank you." Those 4 words hit Marcus harder than any enemy fire ever had. He sank into a nearby chair, his mind reeling. "Thank me? For what?" "For saving her life, for changing her world, for giving her the strength to become who she is today." The Admiral paused. "Marcus, do you know what she's accomplished since you found her in that cellar?" No. I tried to stay away. I didn't want to interfere with her recovery. She became the youngest ambassador in Velothi history. She's negotiated 3 major peace treaties, including the one that ended the Hegemony War. The refugee assistance programs she's designed have helped millions of displaced beings across the galaxy, and she credits it all to something you told her that day. Marcus stared at the Admiral in confusion. "I don't remember saying anything special. You told her she would grow up to do amazing things. You told her to make her people proud." The memory came flooding back. Kneeling down to eye level with a traumatized little girl. seeing the determination in her large silver eyes despite everything she had lost. He had meant those words, but he had never imagined they would carry such weight. "She remembers that?" he asked quietly. "She remembers everything, Marcus. Every word you spoke, every kindness you showed her. She's been searching coalition records for years, trying to find the human who saved her." Dr. Vasquez sat down beside Marcus, her voice gentle but firm. "This could be good for you, you know. Seeing the positive outcome of your actions, instead of focusing on what you couldn't prevent." Marcus shook his head. "You don't understand. After I dropped her off at Proxima Base, I went after those slavers. I tracked them to their base in the outer territories." "I know," Admiral Mitchell said. "Operation Silent Thunder. You destroyed their entire network, freed over 400 slaves. It was one of the most successful solo missions in Coalition history." "It wasn't successful enough," Marcus replied bitterly. 3 of those slaves were children from Zara's world. 3 kids who had been hiding when the raiders came back for a second sweep. I was supposed to protect everyone, not just the ones I stumbled across." "Marcus," Dr. Vasquez said firmly, "you cannot save everyone. It's not possible. Doesn't stop me from trying." Admiral Mitchell leaned forward in the hologram. "Marcus, this meeting isn't about relitigating the past. Ambassador Velthani specifically requested that it be private, personal. She doesn't want military officials there, doesn't want it to be a publicity event. She just wants to talk to you." "About what?" "I don't know. She wouldn't say over official channels. But Marcus, she seemed nervous when she made the request. Whatever she wants to tell you, it's important to her." Marcus stood and walked back to the observation window. Below, Earth's Terminator line was moving across the Pacific, bringing night to one hemisphere and day to the other. It struck him as a fitting metaphor for his own life, constantly balancing between light and darkness, never quite settling into either. "Where is she now?" he asked. "Diplomatic Station 7, orbiting Centauri Prime. She's there for the final signing of the Hegemony Accords." Marcus knew about the Hegemony Accords, a comprehensive peace treaty that would end decades of conflict between multiple star systems. It was exactly the kind of complex, multi-species negotiation that required someone with extraordinary diplomatic skills. "She negotiated that treaty?" he asked. "Led the negotiations personally for 2 years, the Admiral confirmed. "Marcus, she's not the frightened little girl you remember. She's become one of the most respected diplomats in the galaxy. Because of what happened to her people. Because of how she chose to respond to what happened to her people." "Dr. Vasquez corrected. "Trauma can break people, or it can forge them into something stronger. You showed her which path to take." Marcus thought about that day 15 years ago, remembered the feel of Zara's small hand in his as they walked through the ruins of her world. He had tried so hard to keep her calm, to help her focus on good memories instead of the horror around them. But he had no idea that those conversations would shape the rest of her life. "What if she's disappointed?" he asked suddenly. "What if she's built me up in her memory as some kind of hero? And when she sees me, she realizes I'm just this?" He gestured at himself, gray beginning to show in his black hair, scars visible on his hands and face, the slight limp from a mission gone wrong 3 years ago. "What if she sees who I really am, and realizes she wasted 15 years looking for the wrong person?" Admiral Mitchell's expression became almost maternal. "Marcus, do you remember what you told me when you first reported to my command? You said that every life saved was worth any risk, because that life might go on to save others." "I remember. You were right. Ambassador Velthani has saved thousands of lives through her diplomatic work. The peace treaties she's negotiated have prevented wars, stopped conflicts before they could start. The refugee programs she's designed have given hope to beings who had lost everything. That was her, not me. That was both of you," Dr. Vasquez interjected. "You saved her body that day. But more importantly, you showed her that someone cared enough to risk everything to help a stranger. That lesson has shaped everything she's done since." Marcus closed his eyes, trying to imagine the little girl he remembered as a grown woman, negotiating peace between star systems. It seemed impossible, But then again, humans had learned to do impossible things. "When does she want to meet?" he asked finally. "Tomorrow," Admiral Mitchell replied. "Her ship will dock at Coalition Station Prime at 1400 hours. She'll be in Conference Room 7. Will there be media? Other officials?" "No one but you and her." She insisted on that. Marcus nodded slowly. Part of him wanted to refuse, to disappear back to his quarters and avoid the whole situation. But another part of him, the part that had driven him to become a soldier in the first place, knew that he owed this to the little girl who had trusted him enough to let him save her. "All right," he said. "I'll be there." Admiral Mitchell smiled. "Good. Marcus, try to remember that sometimes our failures teach us more than our successes. And sometimes the people we think we've failed are the ones who teach us the most." After the Admiral signed off, Marcus stood alone with Dr. Vasquez on the observation deck. Earth continued its rotation below them, marking the passage of time that had brought him to this moment. "Are you going to be okay?" Dr. Vasquez asked. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "I've spent 15 years trying not to think about that little girl. Trying not to wonder if she was really okay, if she was happy. I told myself it was better not to know, that getting involved in her recovery would just make things worse. And now? Now I'm going to find out if I was right to stay away, or if I've just been a coward." Dr. Vasquez placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Marcus, you're many things, stubborn, self-critical, sometimes reckless. But you're not a coward. You're going to that meeting because it's the right thing to do, even though it scares you. That's what courage actually looks like." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept replaying that day on Velshan, remembering every detail of his interaction with Zara. He had tried so hard to keep her calm, to give her something to hold on to while her world literally fell apart around her. But what if he had said the wrong things? What if his words had somehow damaged her instead of helping her? What if she had spent 15 years building up a fantasy about who he was, and tomorrow's meeting would destroy that? He thought about the 3 children from Velshan who hadn't made it out, the ones the slavers had taken during their second sweep. Marcus had found them eventually, but too late. They had died in captivity before he could reach them. Their names were carved into his memory: Tech, Mira, and little John, who couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Those were his failures. Zara might be his one success, but she was surrounded by so many failures that sometimes he couldn't see her clearly through them. As dawn approached on Luna, Marcus made a decision. He would go to the meeting, but he would be honest with Zara about who he really was. No false modesty, but also no pretending to be the hero she might remember. Just the truth about a soldier who had done his best in an impossible situation and had been lucky enough to save one life when he couldn't save all the others. He owed her that much honesty. And maybe, just maybe, he owed himself the chance to see what had grown from the seed he had planted that terrible day 15 years ago. The transport to Coalition Station Prime would leave in 6 hours. Marcus spent the remaining time preparing himself. Not physically. He was always ready for any mission. But emotionally, he was about to face the most important conversation of his life, and for once, he had no idea what the outcome would be. All he knew was that in a few hours, he would see Zara again. And whatever happened after that would either heal something broken inside him or break something that had somehow managed to stay whole. Either way, there was no avoiding it now. The little girl he had saved was coming home, and she had something to say to him. Marcus arrived at Coalition Station Prime an hour early, his dress uniform crisp but his hands slightly unsteady. He had faced down enemy fleets, infiltrated heavily guarded facilities, and survived impossible odds more times than he could count. But the thought of facing Zara again made his chest tight with anxiety. Conference Room 7 was smaller than he had expected. A simple space with a round table, several chairs, and a large viewing window that showed the stars beyond. Marcus chose a seat facing the door and tried to calm his racing heart. At exactly 1400 hours, the door chimed softly. Marcus stood, his military training taking over even as his emotions threatened to overwhelm him. The woman who entered was not the frightened child he remembered. Ambassador Zara Veldani moved with confidence and grace, her silver skin gleaming softly in the room's lighting. She had grown tall for a Velathi, nearly matching Marcus's height, and carried herself with the poise of someone accustomed to negotiating with the galaxy's most powerful leaders. Her large silver eyes, though those were exactly as he remembered them, intelligent and kind, but now filled with the wisdom that came from years of helping others. She wore the deep blue robes of the Velathi diplomatic corps, but no ornaments or decorations that might indicate rank. This was not Ambassador Veldani meeting with a coalition officer. This was simply Zara, meeting the man who had saved her life. For a moment, they stood in silence, studying each other across 15 years and countless light years. Marcus saw the little girl he remembered in her face, but also the woman she had become, strong, accomplished, and radiating the same inner strength he had sensed that day in the ruins of her world. "Hello, Marcus Chen," she said softly, and her voice carried the same musical quality that characterized all Velathi speech, but with an undertone of emotion that made his name sound like a prayer. "Hello, Zara," he replied, his voice rougher than he intended. You've grown up." A smile touched her lips, the first genuine expression of joy he had seen since she entered. "You said I would do amazing things. I've been trying to prove you right." "You have," Marcus said, still standing awkwardly by his chair. "The peace treaties, the refugee programs. You've helped more people than I ever could." "May I sit?" she asked. And Marcus realized he was still standing at attention like a soldier awaiting orders. "Of course, sorry. I'm a little nervous." "So am I," Zara admitted as they both took seats across from each other. "I've been preparing for this conversation for 15 years, and now I'm not sure where to start." Marcus studied her face, using his years of experience reading people to try to understand what she was feeling. There was nervousness, yes, but also determination, and something that looked almost like excitement. "Why did you want to see me?" he asked finally. "I mean, I'm grateful that you wanted to, but I'm not sure what I can offer you that you don't already have." Zara leaned forward slightly, her hands folded on the table between them. "Do you know what today is?" Marcus shook his head. "Today is the 15th anniversary of the day you saved my life. But more than that, today is the day that the Hegemony Accords officially take effect. 5-star systems that have been at war for decades are now at peace." "Congratulations," Marcus said, though he wasn't sure why she was telling him this. Admiral Mitchell said, "You led those negotiations personally." "I did. 2 years of careful diplomacy, of finding common ground between species that had been killing each other for generations." Zara paused, her silver eyes meeting his directly. "Do you want to know how I was able to do it?" Yes, because of something you taught me in the ruins of my world 15 years ago." Marcus frowned. "I don't remember teaching you anything about diplomacy." "You didn't teach me diplomacy," Zara said with a slight smile. "You taught me something far more valuable. You taught me that the measure of a person isn't what they can destroy, but what they're willing to sacrifice to save others." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He remembered saying something similar to Zara during their journey to Proxima Base, but he had never imagined she would remember it, let alone build her life around it. "Zara, let me finish," she said gently but firmly. "For 15 years, I've been telling people about the human who saved me. Not just because you pulled me from that cellar, but because of how you did it. Do you remember what you did after you freed me?" Marcus thought back. "We walked to my ship. We stopped at every building, every house. You checked for survivors even though the raiders might have come back. You saved a Jith, a simple animal, even though it bit you and slowed us down." Zara's voice grew stronger. "When I asked you why you did that, you said it was scared and hurt, same as I was. It was just a scared animal." "Exactly." Zara stood and began pacing slowly around the room. "Do you know what the Hegemony War was really about? Resources? Territory? Trade routes?" Marcus nodded. "All of the above, according to the briefings I read. That's what everyone thought. But when I actually sat down with the representatives from all 5 systems, I discovered something else. They were all afraid. Afraid of being abandoned. Afraid of being conquered. Afraid of being forgotten. She stopped pacing and faced him directly. They were all like that Jith you saved. Scared and hurt, and lashing out at anything that came too close. And I remembered what you taught me. That sometimes the most important thing you can do is show kindness to something that can't defend itself. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Zara, what are you saying? I'm saying that the hegemony accords exist because of you. Because you showed a frightened child that there were people in the galaxy who would risk everything to save a stranger. Because you taught me that strength isn't about what you can destroy, it's about what you choose to protect. The room fell silent, except for the soft hum of the station's life support systems. Marcus stared at Zara, struggling to process what she was telling him. You can't be serious, he said finally. I saved one little girl. You're the one who became a diplomat, who spent years negotiating peace. I became a diplomat because I wanted to be like you, Zara replied simply. I wanted to be someone who showed up when others needed help, who put themselves at risk for people they didn't even know. She walked to the viewing window and looked out at the stars. After you left me at Proxima Base, I used to lie awake at night wondering if you had made it back safely, wondering if you had found the raiders who killed my family. And then the news reports came in about the slaver base that had been destroyed, about the hundreds of slaves who had been freed. Marcus joined her at the window. How did you know that was me? Because the reports said it was a single human operative who refused to give his name when the freed slaves asked who had saved them. She turned to look at him. That sounded exactly like something you would do. Those slaves deserved to be free. Yes, they did. And because you freed them, they went on to live full lives. They had families, started businesses, created art, made discoveries. One of them was a scientist who developed the agricultural techniques that ended famine on 3 worlds. Another became a teacher who educated thousands of children across the outer territories. Marcus felt overwhelmed. Zara, I can't take credit for. Another was a storyteller, she continued, her voice growing stronger, who traveled from world to world, telling the story of the nameless human who had saved her. Her stories inspired a whole generation of young people to join aid organizations, to dedicate their lives to helping others. She paused, letting her words sink in. Marcus, do you understand what I'm trying to tell you? That day on Velshan, you didn't just save one little girl. You started something. Every life you saved has gone on to save others. Every act of kindness you showed has been passed on and multiplied. Marcus stared out at the stars, his mind reeling. He had spent 15 years focusing on his failures, on the people he hadn't been able to save, but Zara was showing him a different picture, one where his actions had created ripples of positive change across the galaxy. The 3 children from Velshan, he said quietly. The ones the slavers took. I found them too late. I know, Zara said softly. I've read the classified reports. I know about Tech and Mira and Little John. Marcus flinched at the names. If I had been faster, if you had been faster, you might have died trying to save them, and then you never would have saved the 400 slaves at the raider base. You never would have inspired the stories that motivated others to join the cause. You never would have shown me that there were people worth becoming. She moved closer to him, her voice gentle but insistent. Marcus, those children died because of evil people doing evil things, but their deaths were not your fault, and your successes are not diminished by your failures. Then why do I still feel guilty? Because you're human, she said with a slight smile. From what I've learned over the years, humans seem to be genetically incapable of accepting credit for the good they do, while being perfectly willing to take responsibility for every bad thing that happens within 1,000 light years. Despite everything, Marcus found himself chuckling. That actually sounds about right. The point is, Zara continued, that your guilt doesn't change the facts. You saved my life. And because of that, I was able to save others. You freed those slaves, and they went on to change the galaxy in countless ways. You've spent 15 years thinking you're not good enough, when the truth is that you've been exactly what the galaxy needed. At that moment, The door to the conference room chimed softly. Admiral Mitchell entered, followed by several other high-ranking coalition officers and what appeared to be diplomatic representatives from multiple species. "Sorry to interrupt," Admiral Mitchell said, though her expression suggested this was planned. "But Ambassador Velthany requested that we witness the rest of this conversation." Marcus looked at Zara in confusion. "What's going on?" Zara walked back to the table and picked up a datapad she had brought with her. "Marcus, what I'm about to tell you is going to be difficult to believe, but I need witnesses because I need the galaxy to hear this." She activated the datapad, and a holographic display appeared showing a complex web of connections. Lines linking planets, organizations, and individuals across multiple star systems. "For the past 5 years, I've been tracking something," she said. "Every person you've saved, every organization they've joined, every life they've touched in turn. This is the result." The holographic web was enormous, spreading across hundreds of worlds and connecting thousands of individuals and groups. The agricultural scientist I mentioned, her techniques didn't just end famine on 3 worlds. They've now been implemented on over 50 planets, saving millions of lives. The teacher, his educational methods have been adopted by school systems across the galaxy. The storyteller, her tales inspired the creation of the Coalition Emergency Response Corps, which has rescued over 10,000 beings in the past decade. Marcus stared at the display, unable to speak. "But that's not all," Zara continued, her voice beginning to carry the authority she used in diplomatic negotiations. "The little girl you saved in that cellar? She grew up to negotiate the peace treaty that ended the hegemony war. The refugee assistance programs she designed have helped over 3 million displaced beings find new homes. The conflict resolution techniques she developed are now taught in diplomatic schools across 12 star systems." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the room. "Marcus Chen, what I'm about to say is being recorded for the official coalition records, and copies will be distributed to every member world of the galactic community." The room fell completely silent. Even Admiral Mitchell, who usually maintained her composure in any situation, was staring at Zara with rapt attention. Zara stood straighter, and when she spoke again, it was with the voice of a diplomat addressing the galaxy itself. 15 years ago, one human soldier made a choice. When faced with a destroyed world and a traumatized child, he could have followed protocol, secured the area, called for backup, waited for proper rescue teams. Instead, he spent hours cutting through rubble with manual tools because he heard someone calling for help. He risked his life to save a stranger's pet. He spent days comforting a frightened child and teaching her that the galaxy still contained good people. Her voice grew stronger, more passionate. That one choice, made by one human in one moment of crisis, has directly led to the saving of over 4 million lives. The peace treaty that takes effect today will prevent wars that could have killed billions more. The techniques and organizations that grew from his example are spreading across the galaxy, creating a network of hope and assistance that spans hundreds of worlds. She turned to face Marcus directly, her silver eyes blazing with intensity. "This is what humans do. Not because they're stronger or smarter or more advanced than other species, but because when they see someone in need, their instinct is to help, regardless of the cost to themselves. This is why humanity deserves its place in the galactic community, not as conquerors or competitors, but as the species that taught us all that true strength comes from lifting others up." The room remained silent for a long moment. Then Zara did something that made Marcus's breath catch. She bowed deeply, in the formal Velathi gesture of ultimate respect. "Marcus Chen," she said, her voice now soft but carrying to every corner of the room, "on behalf of every life you've saved, every war you've prevented, every family you've kept together, and every hope you've made possible, thank you. Thank you for showing us what it means to be worthy of the stars." The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat, could feel tears threatening at the corners of his eyes. Around the room, he saw coalition officers and alien diplomats staring at Zara with expressions of awe and wonder. Admiral Mitchell was the first to speak, her voice uncharacteristically shaky. "Ambassador Velthany, we had no idea. Few beings ever see the full impact of their actions, Zara replied, straightening from her bow. But sometimes, it's important to show them. Sometimes the galaxy needs to remember that heroism isn't about grand gestures or famous battles. Sometimes, it's about one person deciding to dig through rubble because they hear someone calling for help. Marcus found his voice at last, though it came out as barely a whisper. Zara, I don't know what to say. She smiled, the same brave, determined smile he remembered from 15 years ago, but now tempered with wisdom and accomplishment. Say that you'll stop blaming yourself for the people you couldn't save and start taking credit for the ones you could. Say that you'll accept that you're exactly the kind of human the galaxy needs. Marcus looked around the room at the faces staring back at him. Humans and aliens alike. All of them seeing him differently than they had just minutes before. Then he looked back at Zara, the little girl who had become a force for peace across the stars. I'll try, he said finally. That's all any of us can do, Zara replied. Try to be worthy of the trust others place in us. Try to live up to the example that someone once set for us. She moved closer and, to Marcus's surprise, took his hand in both of hers. Through her empathic abilities, he felt what she was feeling. Gratitude, yes, but also hope, determination, and a deep affection for the man who had shaped her understanding of what it meant to be truly strong. The galaxy is a better place because of you, Marcus Chen, she said quietly. Just for him. Thank you for teaching me that the best way to honor those we've lost is to never stop trying to save those we still can. As the recording devices were shut off and the diplomats began to file out, Marcus stood with Zara in the conference room where his life had just been transformed. Outside the viewing window, the stars continued their eternal dance, but now they seemed to shine with promise rather than distance. He had come to this meeting expecting judgment, perhaps forgiveness. Instead, he had been given something far more valuable. The knowledge that his choices had mattered, that his efforts had created ripples of good across the galaxy, and that sometimes, the most important victories are the ones that happen long after the battle is over. The little girl he had saved 15 years ago had indeed grown up to do amazing things, and in doing so, she had saved him right back.